Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Dicebreaker podcast, your weekly podcast coming from the Dicebreaker team live to your homes, or the train in roughly 5 years when everying is back to
I thought you were
normal.
going to say Russia for some reason.
It is also available in Russia.
In Russia.
Yeah, I got, not to immediately go off the road, I got an email from the iTunes podcast team, whatever it is, iTunes podcast hive mind. It was like, we're bringing your podcast to 20 more places, including Montenegro. And I was reading through the list, and all I could do is read all of the place names in the same style of voice as the Eurovision announcers. So it's like, Dicebreaker podcast in Montenegro.
Dis.
and then you have that awkward pause, and the presenter just suddenly realises they're live on air, and they're like,
Hello,
"Hi!"
Latvia. And ours is always like Fern Cotton or someone that clearly looks like they've just been sat there for this 5-second thing where they get to land as many awkward jokes. Anyway, let's introduce the team.
Oh yeah, we're doing a podcast.
Joining me, Matt Jarvis, on this Dicebreaker podcast this week is Johnny Chiodini. How you doing,
Hello,
Johnny?
I'm back. I'm all right. Episode 6. That's half a dozen if you're not a baker. Very excited to be back talking about tabletop games.
Excellent. We're glad to have you on, talking about tabletop games. Alex Meehan, how are you doing today?
I'm the energy. It's gonna come. I'm waiting for it. But you know, I can always just force it.
Well, this is a great opening to a podcast. You're really getting the audience charged.
No. I've seen your lovely smiling faces. It's all the energy I could ever ask for.
Chill lo-fi conversation to
Study too.
play games to, yeah. I don't know. Finally, speaking of chill lo-fi conversation, we have Michael Wheels
Say hello,
Whelan.
my mic. Hello, it's me, Michael Wheels Whelan from Dicebreaker YouTube channel /dicebreaker.com. I am not a baker, so this is also half of a dozen for me. Fantastic.
Does that mean in about 45 minutes it will be half a baker's dozen of podcasts?
Yeah, I'll set a timer.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll make sure to announce that.
Yeah.
When you say 45 minutes, do you mean like an hour and a half?
Yes.
Because this podcast overruns about every time we do it.
It doesn't overrun that much. I think in the context of the people talking on it, it doesn't overrun that much.
Yeah, but you know, like the 100 Years' War overran, but like it really depends on your metrics, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose the 100 Years' War they named afterwards, which is kind of what we're doing with the podcast. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's the 100-minute podcast.
Whereas
Like, really, we only wanted it to last 5 minutes.
The 100.
I love the idea that they pre-named the war.
It's like,
They're
all
like,
right, folks, in
now,
100 years we'll
soldiers,
call
let us
time, all
begin.
right?
Let's begin the 100 Years' War. Wait, what did he call it?
It's like, well, that would make wars a little more civil, right? It's almost like when you set a set number of rounds in a game, and you're like, okay, we'll play to 100 years, and we'll see who's on top, and then we'll just call it quits.
Yeah.
After every year, you roll a die, and if you go higher than 4, then you have to do another turn.
Well, I'm glad everyone could join us this week for our discussion of historical wars. Actually, there's something in that, but I'll come on to that in a second. Let's start with what we've been playing. Johnny, let's start with you, because you haven't been on in a couple of weeks on the podcast.
As per usual, I am doing a lot of pen and paper role playing. Tail end of last week, I had 3 RPG sessions in in about 36 hours, which was a lot. But I've been playing D&D, obviously, because that's what I do, but also Deadlands. Very excitingly, I have been blessed with a preview copy of the next edition, Hard West, which is coming to an end of its Kickstarter. Not Hard West,
Weird
sorry.
West, right?
Deadlands Weird West. Hard West is a turn-based video game
Yeah.
that is heavily inspired by Deadlands, but Deadlands the Weird West, the next edition of Deadlands, the first in 15 years, and I'm having a bloody lovely time. I mean, Deadlands is my favourite RPG anyway, so it's been lovely to sort of explore it. I've got a write-up that should be going up on the site soon-ish. I need to do some edits on it, and then it'll be ready. I've also been playing Ticket to Ride over the app with some friends, I've been playing a lot of XCOM, which is a board game, but I have been playing the new video game. But hear me out, because Will's going to talk about Gloomhaven in a minute, but we recorded a Let's Play of it yesterday with the video game version, and Loli's was absolutely loving it, because she's not played that many video games. She was like, wow, it's amazing that this thing it translates so well to a video game, and I just thought Loli's would love XCOM, so I'm going to try and get her into that. And obviously, very finally, I'm playing more Diplomacy. Since last we spoke, I have been eliminated from the game in which I was France, so President Eric Cantona is no more. But I'm now playing in an anonymous game. So much like you in previous episodes, Matt, I can't say too much in case I give away which nation I am to the listeners. But it is wonderful. And there is one player in particular, I don't know who it is, but they are so funny that I don't think I can betray them. I think I'm going to lose because I enjoy writing letters to them too much, and if I did anything to jeopardise that, I'd never forgive myself. So that's...
I don't know what that says about my game, in which I have been eliminated, so clearly I wasn't making enough jokes.
No.
I think also giving away which country I was on the podcast was a mistake, because then I
Yes.
immediately got swept by Russia as
Ouch.
Germany. I was surrounded to begin with, which is the excuse I will use. But yes, it's been jumping back to God, I was going to say Haunted West, which is a different RPG that's upcoming. Deadlands. I think Wills and I were the members of the team who had not played it.
Yes.
But it's been very exciting hearing you, because everyone knows of your love of Deadlands, kind of chat about what's exciting about this new edition. And having now played it for myself, I can see why you love it, because it's really bloody good.
Yeah, it's just lovely. It's got buckets and buckets of atmosphere, and it's a bit like D&D in that it's very easy for people to imagine the world, so it's not hard to get people on a story hook, but then you can also just put so much intrigue in there, and I think my favourite thing about it is that danger is never far away, because it's a world in which if you say the wrong thing, someone can draw a gun and try and kill you on the spot, and that's just sort of how the world works. So at any point, you can just insert some gravitas by being like, now hold on there. Like, these are some hard words you're talking here. I mean, like, Meehan is pretty much a master of this. Meehan's character will wade into any situation and just be like, I'm going to try and talk my way through this. And if it goes wrong, well, let's see what happens. You're fearless, Meehan.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do that in real life, so, you know, in tabletop RPGs, the escapism allows me to use honeyed words in any situation to potentially get myself or other people out, and if it goes wrong, then, oh well, you know, the consequences will be bad for my character, but I'm scot-free.
I've been going against type in this campaign, actually. I've played a character who is morally good.
Yeah.
Which is very strange for me. But yeah. Because even Robert O'Kopp is, although he's lawful good, he is so lawful good that he is authoritarian. Whereas I am just playing like a sort of humble priest who wants nothing more to protect people and stuff. So,
It's very unusual.
I'll admit I was
I
waiting
have
for
been
the
very
hill turn.
preachy, of course. No, it won't happen. It won't happen.
I actually love
Unless
Satan.
y'all become sinners.
But yeah, that's so I guess when this goes out, tomorrow we'll see the first episode of our 6-week Deadlands mini campaign go up. We're taking a season break from Dungeon Breaker, our D&D series, and then we're hitting the Weird West, playing with as many of the rules of the new edition as we can, but with some reloaded hacked in, because the preview I saw was not complete, obviously, because they are still working on the game. But so far, it's in rude health, everybody. I'm looking forward to playing it more.
One of my friends is currently creating a character for Deadlands, and just going through the process with them has been a really fun experience, because with Deadlands, and I want to make sure I get this right, luckily I have Deadlands expert here, Johnny Chiodini. But Deadlands doesn't really have classes, does it? It's more like you use edges to create a version of classes.
Yeah. So you've got backgrounds and you've got edges and hindrances. And backgrounds can bestow things like the ability to use, powers on you, but it's not a hard and fast class in as it is in other RPGs. If anything, you work backwards because you'll have a background or an edge or a hindrance, and it'll be like, here are the requirements to take this. So you make your character first in terms of their stats, just based on what you want to be good at, whether you want to be good at fighting or shooting or running or whatever. And then you go shopping for stuff that deepens that character. Mm-hmm. And Wheels famously hates it, which why, if you're watching the video version of this, you will have just seen him get up and walk away. He's back now.
I just shut the window because there was someone with a leaf blower outside that was getting closer and closer, and I was like, no.
I just see your hair ruffle.
The edges remind me of like the classic Fallout games, like taking things that hinder you in exchange for things that help you, kind of thing.
I think it's such a rich way of creating a character because you're not restricted by, okay, I have this race, I have this class. Because in Deadlands there aren't really races. Obviously people can be any human race they like, but like there's not, like orcs and elves and whatever. Like they're not shaped by, I am this class and therefore this is how I play. It's very much like, I want to create a character that likes to do these things, but they can also potentially do these things as well. And it kind of allows you to, I think, build a more organic character. It's more flexible. There's less restrictions. You're not like cornered into a certain bracket. And I think, I've really noticed that helping, my friend create that character, because we kind of came up with the idea for the character first, and then we kind of worked out, okay, how do we actually translate this into a workable thing? And I'm even like going back, and with the character I have, I'm even like going back and kind of changing a few things, because Johnny helped me make it, but there's a few things that I'm kind of like, oh, I feel like this might be more suitable to who they are. And like, I know some people might be staunchly against, oh, you can't like, go backseas. But I'm like, I don't know, I feel like I can get away with that because I'm still working along with the boundaries of, I'm not a level above anyone, but I'm just like getting a better idea of who my character is. And making the system work with that.
I mean, I think that makes sense because all the characters were just ones I quickly genned for a one-shot that then turned into a campaign. So it makes sense that people should be allowed to go back and retool their characters.
Yeah. Like, there's a hindrance I want to change. Because I kind of feel like it doesn't really fit with... I would rather take a hindrance that fits better with what I think my character is bad at than the one I currently have now. Because I'm very much happy to lean into the things that they're good at, whilst accepting that there are things that, they're not accomplished.
That's what I like about Savage Worlds as a rule set, really, is that it makes you fond of the things you suck at. Like, whereas in D&D or other RPGs, people talk about dump stats, and it's like, charisma's my dump stat. I don't do any of the talking stuff. Whereas, in Savage Worlds, for example, it'd be like, every time I try and do talking stuff, if this happens, it goes bad for me in the following way, but I still have a window to succeed in it. It's a pulpy, very quick to pick up system, with, as I've said many times before, wildly inconsistent damage. As one of the party, I won't say who, learned very recently, but I'm fond of it. I love it. It's great.
I was just going to say, I've been one of the things that I forgot to put in the list that I've just put in is I've been starting a new Blades in the Dark campaign.
Oh yeah,
with a few friends from the office, and I think there's a very similar thing in Blades where it's like one of the things that I'm not too keen on from Dungeons and Dragons character building is it's very much like here's all the things you can be good at, like pick some things that you're good at, and they're usually either killing people or solving puzzles. Whereas like with Blades, every single decision that you make about your character is in service to who they are as a person, and then the stuff just comes from that. I think like it's very much like when you're adding pips to your actual stats, it's not just okay, you can just add dice now. It's like you can do whatever you want with 2, but one of them you have to think, okay, well, why is this character good at this based on my background, and why is this character good at this based on my heritage and stuff like that. Like there's loads of little bits that just encourage you to actually flesh out a character rather than just like a sheet of stats, which I think is really important. And it's like going back through the character creation with people, I've really been like reintroduced to how good it is at that.
Wheels, as you're already talking, what else have you been playing other than Blades in the Dark?
Well, I, as Johnny hinted, I've been playing some Gloomhaven, but the PC video game edition, which is the computer game. It's very much like a pretty faithful adaptation. It's missing like certain characters that they haven't put in yet, and like the campaign I think is slightly different because it's a bit more. I don't know if it's just like a whole new thing that's been written for the game specifically, or if it's just like a placeholder for when they put the new one in, because it's very much in early access at the moment. But it's like, yeah, it feels very much like playing from like the short experience that I've had of playing the Frosthaven demo. Like it feels like a very natural thing to make into a video game. And I think even if you had no idea about the board game, you would still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's a very, very nice adaptation. It feels very early access, like a few of the animations are a bit choppy and stuff like that, but it's still really pretty. I think, like Johnny said, we were sat there because we recorded a Let's Play, and hopefully this will either have already been out or will be out this week by the time you watch this podcast. But yeah, like the visual sort of aspects of it, even though it just looks like a nice fantasy game, but when you've already seen what like the board game component version is, and seeing it like come to life is really, really fun. And just like the way in which they've used that sort of like hex format to really add sort of life to their buildings. Like instead of just having like I'm trying to think of an example, like a grid-based like XCOM map where it's all very sort of like angular and stuff like that. Because they've already got that hexy kind of grid from the board game, it feels a lot more natural and more sort of like rock formations and littered bits of furniture and all that kind of stuff. We spent about 10 minutes looking at a chair. I'm not entirely sure why, but we did.
Yeah, well, Lollies was really enamoured with the chair as a thing, and then it was an obstacle, so it did become relevant at one point, which set us back 20 minutes. We were like, but it is a nice chair. So, yeah.
But yeah, it's really good. I would recommend it. I don't think it's super expensive. I think it's like 10-20 quid, that kind of region. But it's got like from what it looks like, a fair amount of content that's already in and a fair amount to come. And they're planning on releasing multiplayer as well, so you can play online.
That's about a tenth of the price of actual Gloomhaven. So
Yes,
if you aren't
exactly.
sure whether or not you want to pick it up and possibly give yourself a hernia hefting it into your flat,
It's a great demo, yeah.
yeah.
Like if you were really thinking about getting the box, but you were still sort of struggling with the idea, like I think this really gives you a proper feel for the game.
I am tempted, to be honest. I ended up searching for it online, but I couldn't find it available for any retailers who pay their taxes. So I decided to wait until my friendly local game store reopens.
I saw a copy in a store in local Brighton, and I was like, ooh. And then I remembered how much it costs, and I was like, oh.
I wonder whether, in the wake of Frosthaven just doing brilliantly well on Kickstarter, whether more shops will suddenly pick up Gloomhaven as kind of a... Because Frosthaven won't be out for a year or so, and there'll presumably be a bunch of people wanting to get in on Gloomhaven even more so. But
will we see it in John Lewis? That's my metric.
Next to, I don't know, whatever is in John Lewis nowadays, game-wise. Ludo.
Obama Llama, probably.
Yeah,
like that.
Obama Llama, definitely.
Jesus.
A
My local
£90
Waterstones has a
version of...
really good board game selection. They've got a guy there who's clearly really passionate about tabletop.
Yeah.
There are
Waterstones
lots
is
of signs
really good.
being like, talk to me! So, we'll see Gloomhaven, I reckon.
Please talk to me.
I'm lonely, please.
He's just been playing Gloomhaven themselves for like 17 hours straight. Please.
Everyone that comes in the shop is always asking for books. I don't understand why.
All right, fantastic. Alex Meehan, what have you been playing?
Oh, right. Let's get this over with. Scythe update of the week.
Yeah.
Oh god.
It's still going. Johnny's so happy. And
Have you
Will's
won one
so
yet?
tired. I won. I've won one, but it wasn't last week's. That's for sure. Yeah, I lost quite badly. It's with the usual crew, and it was going well for a while.
Mhm.
I thought, oh, okay, you know when you get in a position where you're like, things are going to align, like the stars are going to align. I've set up loads of great stuff. I just need to make it for a few more turns, and I'm going to get that all that delicious, investment I've put in. I'm going to finally see, a return. And then my friend just comes along and then beats me twice in combat and wins the game.
Ouch.
And
Oh.
by beating me in combat, they kicked me off the factory space as well.
No.
Oh,
Which
And
faction were you?
this is the problem. I was Saxony. I don't really get along well with Saxony.
Saxony are great. I won my first game as Saxony, so I have a special place for Saxony in my heart.
The problem is I don't like playing aggressively, and like Scythe is one of those games that you can get away with not squaring up to anyone. You can just like get on with your own thing. But the problem is that Saxony, their big advantage is like you could win as many stars as you like through combat. And I'm like, I don't really want to fight anyone because I'm quite happy working on these things. But my friend who was playing as Nordic was like, I can win this game right here, right now, just by... And I had a lot of popularity as well, which meant that those tiles that I'd had occupied were a massive part of my score percentage. So I basically lost half my score in that one round. So instead of losing, but coming quite close to second place, I lost by a square mile. And I was sat there very quiet for a little bit, and my friend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know. You might have to ask me in like an hour."
My empire of points. Oh.
It
I think
was-
it's the thing about Scythe is because the scoring is basically multiplication, right? It's the stars and the tiles play such a big part that you can just end up, and then popularity as well is the other multiplication factor. So it's like it's not swingy, but it definitely, like you lose a couple of tiles or you lose a bit of popularity, and suddenly you can shoot down or up the scoring, which can work both ways. But yeah, that sounds pretty savage.
Yeah.
It's because they have that like laddered thing, right?
That's
so it's
right.
like if you like lose a bit of territory, then you could lose out on like a couple of points. Whereas like if you lose a bit of popularity and go down a level, suddenly you lose like half your points.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Because I was in a quite high bracket of popularity, but that meant that a lot of my points at the time were coming from the tiles that I had occupied. But obviously having those taken away from me meant that my final score was embarrassing, and I felt like my pride had like fallen into the toilet, and my friend had like flushed it.
Well, you'll always
but-
be in a high bracket of popularity to me, Meehan.
Oh, see, look, this is why I stick around. No, it's fine. I love Scythe, and I'll be back again. Just once I've regained some, sense of calm. Other than Scythe, I've been playing, once again, my friend and I played a bit of Splendor. For people who've listened to previous episodes of the podcast, I believe I've talked about it before, but just to reiterate, that's a really great game. It's such an easy game to pick up and get going with, and it's another one of those games where, you don't realise how quickly things can turn. But because it's so short, it doesn't hit and hurt so badly. it is a game that you can kind of sit with on a Sunday afternoon and just sort of dawdle along with while listening to some music, eating some Crispies, maybe. Other than that, I've also been playing Betrayal at House on the Hill, Mr. Jarvis.
Yeah, we played that together over
You,
a tabletop
yeah.
sim. Yeah.
As people may know, it's one of my favourite games.
Well, if you're a big fan of Betrayal at House on the Hill, we'll be streaming it by the time this podcast comes out yesterday.
No, the video will be available.
So tune in live yesterday for a lovely playthrough of Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Well, the video will be available.
Yes, it will.
And I'm sure our dedicated fans would already have watched the stream. So that's just going to paint their understanding of how good it is. We played the Widow's Walk expansion, didn't we, Mr. Jarvis?
Yeah, which I think you and I are in agreement that it's good. Like it's not like the biggest expansion in the world, but it definitely adds enough where it's like this is a really solid, worthwhile expansion. But I saw a load of people on the internet around the time it came out a few years ago just kind of dunking on it and not loving it, which I didn't really understand. But I don't know if it was just people who already didn't like Betrayal because of its very much like swingy nature and it's inconsistent as a game. But like I think Widow's Walk actually adds quite a lot to it that just makes it, if you like Betrayal, it's more of that, but also it kind of does tune a couple of things to make them a little more. It makes it easier to get around with like the dumbwaiters, so you can travel between floors and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, it's always been pretty good and worth getting if you already own the original. But
This is the problem that here you go. I'll trace back the problem for you. You went on the internet.
Yeah.
true.
And there were people there who had opinions.
To be fair though, Meehan, the internet is where Dicebreaker.com exists, so...
The
Where this very
only
podcast exists.
the only sanctuary in a sea of
Yep. Dicebreaker.com,
sea
the
of awful.
only acceptable website. He said,
The
wearing
only
a
opinion that
Eurogamer
matters.
t-shirt.
But this is when you told me about this. This is the first time I've heard of anyone complaining about Widow's Walk, because I was like you. I was under the understanding that it was well liked, and this is the only thing I can see would be people who already dislike Betrayal, just disliking Widow's Walk. And I'm like, what do you expect? It's not gonna change the entire game. It's an expansion. Like it expands on existing things. So it's not gonna fix the things you don't like about the game. It's just going to add more to it, which it does with not just the dumbwaiters and the roof. I think it adds as well as like a new location. But it also adds some really fantastic scenarios, which I think are very creative and weird. Like the one we played had like fort straws.
Brain
And-
straws.
Yeah, brain straws, that was it. And they were like tentacles, and they went around and sucked your thoughts out of your brain.
My thoughts.
Yeah, and you had to actually write down what you think your character's thought would be, and attach it to a stat and everything. So I think Widow's Walk is really cool because it like takes the very base like core mechanics of Betrayal and kind of runs with them, and does some like weird creative things with like at its core a very straightforward game. Yeah, we had fun doing that. It was great.
It's making me just picture Scottish widow adverts of like just a widow just wandering about in some woods,
Black hood.
being
Black and red.
being alluringly beautiful but also sad, and making you wonder whether the circumstances in which her husband or partner died.
I mean, she
I'll
might
be back in
loaded.
20. I'm just out on a widow's walk. See ya.
Sorry for your loss.
my husband's died. Better go have me widow's walk.
But madam, your husband is still alive. Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll go for my walk anyway, and if he's still alive
We'll see.
when I get back.
We'll see.
Matt,
Keep eating that silvery porridge, will you?
Or, what about you, Matt, to wrench us back
Yeah.
onto...
Matt, what have you been playing?
I will start with a couple of quick things. I bought a Crokinole board. as you do.
Yeah,
I've joined
incredible.
the Crokinole Club, which my wife and I proceeded to then play for about 3.5 hours last night in the way that
wonderful.
Crokinole does, where you sit down to play and then it's suddenly very late at night. She had never played before. We'd played over Tabletop Simulator actually, but it's not quite the same. Obviously, a Crokinole board is very much a very luxury item. The one I bought was about 200 quid, and it was just, we were very lucky in that we got married last year and had some leftover wedding gifts and so on from very kind folks.
Dowry.
So I bought this not considering. I actually set out to buy a Go board, which I've also been playing. So I set out on one Sunday afternoon, having had several Long Island iced teas, going, should buy a Go board. I'm really interested in learning Go, and then ending up on a website that had a Go board, but also had a Crokinole board, and going, yeah, well, while I'm here. So yes,
I'm sure you've already experienced this, Matt. But whenever you learn Go, via the internet, like if you find a YouTube video, there's only one of two people who will teach you. There's either like a really old dude in a polo shirt, or there's just like some guy who's just like hanging out, bro. I got my t-shirt off. I'm wearing some like silk trousers.
Sounds awful. I'm not brave enough to play Go. As I understand it, you need a lot of stones.
Yes. Anyway, moving on. But I've been
he's gone again.
Before the board turned up, I was learning on an app called Crazy Stones, I think, which is not a great. It's really hard to. Turns out it's really hard to search for Go app. But Crazy Stones is apparently one of the better ones. Unfortunately, it has a lot of difficulty levels, and even on the easiest difficulty level, I've now played maybe a dozen games. I have not won a single one of them.
Go is really, really hard. Like,
yeah.
It's quite difficult to wrap your head around in the first place, but also there's just like, it's such a wide open board. There's so many different like possibilities that it can be really easy to get lost in.
Yeah, so I've been playing on 9x9, which is the recommended kind of beginner size before you go to 13x13, then 19x19. And then, my wife and I started playing the physical version last night as well, before we busted out Crokinole. So hopefully we'll learn at kind of the same pace, because I think that's often the problem, is if you've got, with a game like that's kind of perfect information and is pure strategy, if one person is above the other, you instantly get into a case where, unless you know certain strategies or know kind of what you're doing, it's really hard to progress. So hopefully we'll play each other, but then also kind of progress at the same level and be able to reach out. But yeah, it's been one of those things I've always wanted to play, because I've never really played it very much in terms of traditional games. But yeah, Crokinole is amazing. It continues to be amazing. So yes, those have kind of absorbed my evenings recently. And then the other thing, which I'm reviewing for Dicebreaker.com, hopefully later this week, potentially next week, depending on, I've put quite a bit of time into it already, but it would depend how much time I need to really fill. I feel like I'm pretty sure that it's bloody brilliant already, but I want to make sure I'm doing a full job of it, is Undaunted North Africa, which is the follow-up to last year's Undaunted Normandy, which was it's a deck-building card game, but it's also kind of like a skirmish war game. So in Normandy, it's two players. One player was the US, one player was Germany. It was 1944, just after D-Day. As you started with a small deck of cards that you would then draw and play to move your tokens on the map. So, for instance, you could move a rifleman one space and then attack and things like that. North Africa is very much built on that gameplay, but I think it just makes it even better. So it's now the Long Range Desert Group, the LRDG, which I think is the British forces in 1940 or 1941 against the Italians, who are members of the Axis and then holding that territory at that time. So it's the interesting things, I think, is that there's still that core gameplay of you draw cards and you bolster, so you add cards to your deck more and more by playing commandos, so then you're able to draw more cards and then move them more regularly and things like that. Whereas Normandy was much more squad based, so you had squads of riflemen A, B, C and squads of machine gunners A, B, C. North Africa is much more about the kind of, there are no squads per se, but there are They've added vehicles, so there's now tank drivers and tank gunners. You can get into jeeps and drive them around. And it's much more asymmetrical as well. So the LRDG, who are kind of moving in to try and take the Italian-occupied regions, they are very much focused on blowing stuff up. So they have saboteurs, they have demolition experts, and there are now structures that the LRDG can move to and blow up by attacking. Whereas the Italians are just trying to hold them. So there's this kind of... Generally in Normandy, it was more like, okay, whoever can hold X number of objectives wins. That was most of the scenarios were hold X number of objectives, you win. And here it's, okay, the Italians are trying to hold this number of objectives while the LRDG are trying to blow up that number of objectives. So it becomes a slightly different thing where in a recent scenario played, the Italians had a tank, and so they had much more heavy armor. But the LRDG, because they were a lot more nimble, so they were able to move more regularly. They had snipers, things like that. So it was more like they were the small kind of commando group, whereas the Italians were the heavy kind of slow armor, more heavily powered, but less able to move around. And then another scenario we played was there's a new mechanic about escaping. So one side might have to try and eliminate a certain character by attacking them enough before they can escape to a certain part of the map and flee. So there are things like, oh, you're trying to escort an agent or something like that. And I think Normandy was already really good. I think North Africa, for me, is even better. It's, like I say, it's a lot more asymmetrical, so I don't think that will necessarily gel with people who are looking for more kind of head-to-head. We're going for the same stuff. We've got the same kind of starting cards. But it feels really good to play. Like, the vehicles are interesting without being any more complex. There's kind of new terrain stuff where vehicles can't pass through. There's recon aircraft and things like that. So I think it just adds to what was already like a really, really good game. That's quite a lot, cool. But I'll be writing up my full thoughts. I just got very excited. It's bloody great.
Yeah, if you are interested in that, we played Normandy on the stream. Me and Loli's had a game, so that is available on the Dicebreaker YouTube channel, and it's really cool. It's Loli's is already a massive deck builder fan because of her complete enamor for Star Realms, so I think she quite enjoyed seeing it in another context with that sort of like tactical aspect as well. I think I really enjoy when games sort of like take something that's quite standard and then also add on like a map element. Like I really love Summoner Wars for that reason, where it's like, yeah, it's like a Magic style card game, but you're placing down these troops and actually moving them around. So it's like that standard thing of like, yes, it's like Star Realms where you're adding to a deck and getting new troops out, but you also have to like, you know, manage their positioning and stuff like that. And I think that really adds to stuff like that.
Well, that actually segues very nicely into news. It's not the news that's top of this list, but it's the news that's top of this list now. Is that there's a new set coming out for Star Realms. And just as we didn't have Johnny on last week to discuss Deadlands, although it got its due earlier, we don't have Loli's on this week to discuss Star Realms. Arguably I don't think even arguably, easily the biggest Star Realms fan among us. But it's really interesting. They have announced Rise of Empire, which is a standalone set for Star Realms, coming out next year after a Kickstarter this autumn. And the interesting thing about it is it's described as being a kind of legacy game built on Star Realms. So it's a prequel to Star Realms. Not that I don't think Star Realms is really known for its story. But
God, the Star Realms prequels. I can't wait for the Jar Jar shit.
But so if Star Realms for people who don't know, like Will's kind of explained, it's a deck building game where you're two opposing sides or factions within this galaxy, and you kind of take cards from the middle, build up, and knock the other opponent. I think it's like influence or the equivalent of something like that. That's it, authority, yeah. But it's basically health. It's another McGubbin for health. But Rise of Empire it's built on that gameplay apparently. But the new thing about it is it takes place across a set of missions that when you finish a mission, they can have knock-on effects to future missions. And that includes kind of legacy aspects, although there's no destruction. I think they've confirmed there's no kind of tearing up cards or anything like that. There will be elements of, if you recruit certain cards, you can pay extra to then make them multi-faction, so they will side with your faction kind of semi-permanently, so they will then have another ability for your faction from then on, and that will be permanent through a sticker. So from then on, every time that card comes up and is purchased, they'll give you an extra ability if they are sided with your faction, which sounds really interesting.
Do we know if it's co-op or competitive?
It's competitive.
Okay, because when we streamed Star Realms, me and Lollies, we played the co-op mode, and I actually really enjoyed that, and I think that might have been an interesting way of doing it, but never mind.
I think they've indicated that it will be the first of several legacy kind of sets for Star Realms, so it might be that they then do a co-op version or release a co-op mode.
It's nuts how much Star Realms content there is.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I think considering most people just buy like the standard box, which is like very, very cheap and very good game to just sort of like start your collection off with. It's not like, I don't know who's buying all of this extra stuff apart from Alex Lowleys.
Well, it's kind of like Dominion, right? Dominion, another bit,
Yeah.
just has expansion after expansion, and is kind of unbelievable how much stuff there is. Because you think of,
nuts.
Dominion, it's that box, and there's like, there's like 24 expansions or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't
But yeah,
realise
it'll
how
be.
many there were.
I guess deck builders are just quite easy to expand, maybe?
Yeah, just to add cards, you can swap them in and
Yeah.
out and so on. And the other thing worth saying here is that although it's a legacy game, because there's no destruction, when you get to the end, you can keep replaying it. So apparently there'll be content that's specifically made to play once you've finished the campaign, and you can kind of keep playing your customized set, which is very cool. So yeah, like I say, that's coming to Kickstarter this autumn and then coming out next year. And they say it will come to the app as well, because I think the app is a big thing for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a little bit of Star Realms news for you. And jumping back to the thing that is top of this list, the news list, which we've already touched on already, is that Frosthaven, the Gloomhaven sequel, is now the biggest board game Kickstarter evs. It's made it's made a lot of money. It made almost $13 million, which also makes it the third biggest Kickstarter project of any kind ever, behind the Pebble Time smartwatch, I think, and the Coolest Cool Box or Coolest Cooler, something like that, which I think was if memory serves, was a bit of a nightmare campaign that then didn't deliver.
This is not a good omen for Frosthaven that those two
I think the
the
Pebble
most
Time was
forgettable things on earth for the other two in the top three.
But so in terms of board games and tabletop, as they classify tabletop projects, it's overtaken Kingdom Death Monster 1.5.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, which had made 12.4 million. So the exact amount of money that Frosthaven made was $12,969,608. So yeah, very close to 13 million. And also another really fascinating thing to note here is that it had over 83,000 backers, whereas Kingdom Death Monster had 19,000. So about 4 times the number of backers, which I think is because Kingdom Death was...
Kingdom Death is miniatures, right? So that's going to be a lot more expensive.
I think.
And plus, like 75% of their like project fund went on making small plastic breasts. So I think that's going to be a huge part of their cost.
Who are these titty-loving oligarchs that are spending so much money on a Kickstarter? What is this?
I don't want to meet them.
Yeah, so one Matt Jarvis has written in this Dicebreaker.com news story that...
he sounds like a hack.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't necessarily trust him, but Kingdom Death Monster's core set was $200, and Frosthaven's core box is $100. Neither of those include shipping, bear in mind, because they're both big old boxes, but it's literally double the price for Kingdom Death. So it kind of gives you an idea.
So yeah.
So yeah, then Frosthaven it's out next March, something like that. It's out, March 2021. And it's obviously, like we've kind of noted previous times, it's a standalone thing. It follows up on Gloomhaven. It's very much that kind of gameplay, but it's a lot chillier now.
Yeah.
It's Gloomhaven, but you have to wear a jumper.
Yeah, it's actually, speaking of the Coolest Cool Box, or whatever the heck it's called, it's actually a built-in cool box, and you can just put your drinks and, cheese sandwiches in there.
Mate,
Cheese
it's a
sandwiches?
palanquin. I'd love a cheese sandwich right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Me too. I'm going to have one when we finish the stream, I reckon.
Oh, right.
Let's,
Cheese
record.
sandwiches all round. I'm
That's
sure that's
how we-
what...
Who knows?
That's how we party, folks.
I'm sure that's what Isaac Childress had as soon as he saw that Frosthaven had almost hit $13 million.
Well,
He was like, I'm going to treat
biggest
my...
Kickstarter in the world. Get the Marmite out.
It certainly made a lot of cheddar.
Johnny, you're on fire today.
Thank you very much, Meehan.
Goodness.
Yeah, the dad jokes are just coming out.
Wow.
They've definitely got a lot of bread now, haven't they, Dad?
Yes, my son.
Hey, plenty of
He's learning.
Yeah, so there we go. It just made a load of money. There's the story.
I'm so happy.
The Kickstarter's over now, so I don't think you might be able to late pledge, but otherwise you'll have to wait till next spring. But there's a good chance you've already bought it or already backed it, given the number of people that did. So here's another fun one. I don't know if any of you know of Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Quite a title, isn't it?
The reason you may have...
Why is it that like branded properties tend to have like ridiculously long titles?
Like
What was that? The Walking Dead, the board game : Here's Negan.
Yeah, that was that
we
one.
had in the office. Oh my
And there
God.
was the Batman Who Laughs Rising.
Yeah.
Still one of my favourites.
I mean, I don't know if it's better or worse than just name of property : the board game.
Yeah.
I have to say, I just looked at my my stack of board games. The Thing Infectionate Outpost 31
I was just about to
is
say The
much
Thing,
better
yeah.
than
That's
The
a great
Thing,
name.
the board game. It's like
The Thing, the board game.
item,
The board
the
game
item.
thing.
But the reason you may have heard of Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core, is because it was announced at the start of 2018 by Gale Force 9, who also made... they made the Sons of Anarchy board game, they made the Firefly board game, they've made a load of licensed games that are actually pretty well regarded. So people were pretty excited about this. And then it was delayed until 2019. And then it was delayed until 2020. And now they've come out and said, hey, by the way, it has no release date. We don't know when it will come out.
Wow.
So they've essentially said their update, it didn't say it's been delayed till 2021. They said specifically, quoting for accuracy, due to a variety of circumstances out of our control, we're just not at this point able to provide information such as a release date. But as soon as we can, we'll be doing so.
For example, a release
Such as the
date.
thing you've been waiting for 2 years. As soon as the situation allows, we will be getting the game into your hands.
Has
But they said,
anybody-
hey...
Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, they added as part of this, hey, we've designed the game, all the miniatures are done, so and we're playtesting it a heck of a lot, it turns out.
Right.
So there's no word on why this is the case. It could be because of the current COVID-19 situation, which has affected a number of release dates. We've seen things delayed. It could be for whatever reason, because this game has gone through multiple delays now, so it seems like quite a troubled project. But we don't officially know. Dicebreaker has reached out to Gale Force 9 for further information, and we will report that if and when we hear anything back, but for the time being.
I'm picturing an office where just everyone has a facehugger attached, and they're all sort of in that early stage, like the John Hurt bit, where he's just lying there, and like they'll be able to get up in a couple of days, but then they'll have to rush the game out.
The sort of like track history of games focused around colonial marines and the Aliens franchise.
Let's not go there, buddy. I left that life behind, and that's where I wanted to stay.
Yeah,
I'm imagining that it's going to be you go through the ship and there are some aliens miniatures and you're
Dungeon crawler space thing, yeah.
yeah. Which no offense doesn't really spark my fire, but I think
Doesn't
I'll
spark
just what?
It doesn't spark joy.
Yeah.
just Marie Kondo sorting
Marine Kondo.
like
There it is.
Marine Kondo!
Oh, my
Nice.
3 points. Nothing but
Finish the
net.
podcast.
Alex
Finish the
Meehan.
podcast.
Oh my god. Yes.
Here all week.
That's the title right there.
yeah. Let me write that down before I immediately
Marine
forget it,
Kondo.
as always happens.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
That's the best thing that's going to come out of that game.
That
Wow.
joke.
No, I mean, I can't really pass judgment like I am.
Yeah, we've not
Are you
seen a
sure?
single thing
Because
like
it
that.
sounds like you did. with the might of Zeus.
I think
I'm-
it's more like the case of I'm a bit sick of like miniatures games, particularly miniatures games based on like existing franchises. Like I have some goodwill So, for example, the Resident Evil games, I'm like, oh, that seems okay. Like, but they're just such a dime a dozen that
it seems like 70% of Kickstarter is board games that have miniatures that do not require miniatures.
Yeah, it's why games like Legendary Alien Encounters is like, oh, that's cool. I like that because it takes the theme of Alien and kind of, does
sexy.
something interesting with it. Or like the Alien role-playing game, for example. Like, I just think it's such the natural leap is franchise, particularly horror franchise, leap to miniatures situation.
Yeah. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here and say that although I also can't pass judgment in either way, Gale Force 9 has a generally good track record with making interesting licensed games.
No, I like the Firefly game. It's good.
Yeah, so it could be that this is worth the 2 and a bit year wait. Or it could just be it could turn out to be a load of bunk and it's a bit rubbish. I think it's following in the wake of 2 pretty good aliens-inspired dungeon crawlers lately, which is Nemesis is one of them, which is very much Alien, the board game, but legally distinct Alien. Xenomorph.
Vino Smurf.
Which came out last year, I think, and it's very much indebted to it. And the other one was Alone, which I reviewed way back when, and enjoyed quite a lot because it was a dungeon crawler, but it did some really interesting things with your ability to see because of a torch, so you could light up certain corridors, but if you turned away and things like that, and as the monster moved, they would go back into darkness, so you didn't actually know where things were moving, and you could hear noise, but you couldn't tell exactly what was where. So
don't get me wrong, like, that sounds cool. Like, I really like I'm not against dungeon crawlers as a whole. Like, what you just described there, I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. It's when they're like just straightforward. Here are some units. Here are the enemy units. Now engage in a battle in the dungeon, quote. And I'm just like, wow, we've never seen this before. So if they do something interesting with it, then I'm more than happy to give it a go.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Rattling through a few more. This was a news piece that went up today. There's a new Mansions of Madness, but it's not maybe the Mansions of Madness you expect, because it's the original sourcebook for Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, which came out in 1990. Rather than the board game from Fantasy Flight, which there is like a lineage there because Arkham Horror is based on Call of Cthulhu, then Arkham Horror gave birth to Mansions of Madness, all this kind of thing. But as far as anybody cares nowadays, different things. So that's coming out. I think it's already available in digital for Call of Cthulhu, and it's 2 of the original adventures plus 3 new ones, including one set on a golf course.
Yes, please.
It's just like haunted golf course.
Yes, please.
So yeah,
watch a man get pulled into the ninth hole.
I think it reminds me of like Evolution, to bring up the film from like 2002 with David Duchovny and Julianne Moore.
Listeners and viewers, this is not the first time that Matt Jarvis has brought up Evolution.
It's a constant in my mind.
That does not surprise me.
No.
I've not thought about that film in a very long time, and yet
I used to watch
you and the rest of the world.
The animated series was good.
Yeah. I remember that. Make an
also
Evolution board game.
I think they have,
Probably.
You can Google it.
Oh, goodness. Also starred Sean William Scott of American Pie fame.
Oh, wow.
Why do I know so much about Evolution? Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of...
if you search Evolution board game, you get Evolution.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a very good board game, but it's not what I'm looking for.
Related to the Arkham Horror discussion, but not related to Mansion of Madness for Call of Cthulhu, is a new investigator for Arkham Horror, the card game, which I'll pass over to Alex Meehan, who knows the details of this. Our correspondent in Arkham Horror, the card game.
I really hope I'm not in Arkham Horror, because that's a scary place.
Alex
we don't have
Meehan,
to tell you
the
this,
journalist.
I'm here for a special report from Silent Hills.
Oh, that chopper wouldn't work there, that's for sure. Instant crash. Yeah, so there is a bevy of Arkham Horror news sort of at the moment. So there was the announcement of the Innsmouth Conspiracy, which is a new expansion for Arkham Horror the card game, not to be confused with Arkham Horror the board game. Or Eldritch Horror the board game, for that matter.
Or any of the offshoots of the Arkham Horror board game.
Indeed. Yeah, it's set in that classic short story, location Innsmouth, where everyone's weird, it smells like fish.
Yep.
Yep.
Portsmouth was that?
Portsmouth, yeah. Apologies to Portsmouth.
Yeah, come on, man.
Come on.
I've never been to Portsmouth.
Well, you know
And
what?
now
I
you'll
wouldn't
never
go
be
there
allowed.
now if you value your
No,
life.
you're right. I forgot all of Portsmouth.
Now
Listen
you'll
to this
get the
podcast.
Arkham Horror experience of walking in, and they'll turn to you like they know you, and they'll be like, "That's Michael Whelan."
You know what he said about Portsmouth? You know, don't
Yeah.
you?
As
Said
the
it was
people of
like
Portsmouth
Innsmouth.
sharpen their hooks.
All their hooks. Yeah, so it's a new expansion, so new investigators. There's some new mechanics involving curses, basically like a push your luck scenario, and also finding keys to unlock doors, all that sort of malarkey. And as Mr. Jarvis mentioned, the most recent piece of news is that it's not so much a new investigator, it's like a version of an old investigator. So in the core pack of Arkham Horror, the card game, there is an investigator called Daisy Walker. She is a librarian, and she's very always got her nose in books.
I remember that.
Yeah, she's very knowledgeable, so not the most combat ready, but definitely useful in certain situations. And basically a new free to download scenario called Read or Die.
It's like Skate or Die, but for librarians.
Yeah, it's very radical.
Wee.
Yeah. Basically involves a version of Daisy Walker. They explain it by saying there's now parallel dimensions in Arkham Horror, because why not? And this is a version of Daisy Walker who is like the original in the fact that she is bookish, but she has slightly different stats and a new ability, which basically, instead of allowing her to benefit from multiple tomes across the game, she can basically gather all her tomes at once and do like a big beat down.
Hame tome.
Yeah.
With a dreamy far off look and her nose stuck in a book.
Yeah.
She really is a funny girl, that Daisy.
Yeah. Just that meme of Gaston looking at the book upside down, and then a tentacle comes out and just wraps around his neck.
No, Gaston, not that one!
No, not that one.
No one dies like Gaston, has no eyes like Gaston.
Exactly.
Crawls into the spaces between time like Gaston.
Yeah, so it's a parallel version of an investigator, which you can download and print for free now. Also the scenario Read or Die, which you can download and print, involves investigators exploring a mysterious library.
Very spooky.
And Daisy has to be one of the playable investigators. However, this is important, you do require the core game to actually play the scenario, because you'll need more than just one investigator. Unless you play as multiple versions of Daisy and just have like a team of Daisies.
Look,
Yeah, nothing
you
but
said
Daisy.
there were parallel universes, so
Who knows?
into the Daisyverse.
It's going to be like that
Daisy
Tomb
verse.
Raider game where you all play as Lara Croft, but one of you is like polygonal Lara Croft, and one of you is like the Lara Croft no one remembers from Angel of Darkness.
Or the Murder by
God,
Death board game. Murder She Wrote, board game, where everyone plays as Angela Lansbury.
Speaking of Beauty and the Beast, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
A national treasure.
All roads lead back to Beauty and the Beast.
Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury, yeah. So you can download and print that for free now. Just make sure you have the core copy of the game, or you know someone who does, or something like that. Yes.
Cool.
I
All
now
right.
hopefully I can get out of Arkham Horror.
Finally. All right, let's whiz. We're running over a little bit of news because actually it's been a kind of newsy week. So let's whiz through the last couple of things I have on this list. So one of these is very short. Basically, there's a limited edition Warhammer 40,000 model coming to shops, which is the Katachan Colonel.
It's Dylan from Predator. Come on.
Yeah, it very much is. There's even green blood on the leaf.
He's part of that little sub-faction where it's like, I think that whole planet is basically just like Predator troops.
Yeah.
So they were like, well, this is an obvious one kind of thing.
Yeah, so this is a Games Workshop, obviously the makers of Warhammer 40,000, announced this as it will be exclusive to friendly local retailers, independent retailers, as kind of an effort to help them out, obviously due to the impact of the coronavirus and whatnot. Word on the street, the high street, if you will. Hello, I'm Martin Lewis.
No, Matt's on
show.
the street right now.
This is all anecdotal, but I've had a few reports from folks and smaller chains saying that they're only having literally 2 or 3 of these models. So they are actually they are in fact very limited edition. It would, it appears. But we don't know for sure. Games Workshop haven't said how many will be available in total, but there have been reports that basically shops are getting in like 2 and having more than 2 people turn up going, hey, we really like this model, and going, sorry, friends. But yeah, it seems cool. That's a nice little thing, at least in concept.
It wouldn't surprise me if more became available. Like when they opened their 500 store, they released an exclusive Nighthaunt model. And at first it was like, you have to turn up during this time. Like there's a 2-hour window during the Blood Moon where you can get hold of this model. And then my brother actually, as a gift, got it for me like weeks later. He wandered in and was like, I want to get something for my brother. He paints spooks. And they were like, we got you, mate, don't worry. They like really tried to wow him. And so now I have the figure, and it wasn't hard to get, it turns out.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Finally on this list, Talisman Star Wars, which is a very short thing. Alex Meehan, over to you.
Great.
Why do you torture me, Matt Jarvis?
Because today is Revenge of the Sixth.
Oh no, Matt. You can't have Revenge of the 5th and Revenge of the 6th.
Sorry.
You absolutely can.
I said it out loud, so technically Disney own me and everything I say now.
In the words
So
of
you didn't
Babu
use the
Frick.
hashtag.
Hey!
It's only if you use the hashtag that they buy you.
Oh gosh.
In the words of a gonk droid. No confirmation whether you can play as a gonk droid in Star Wars Talisman, although you should. Oh, sorry, I need to word it correctly. Talisman : Star Wars is a new version of Talisman that's coming out from the publishers behind the Risk Warhammer 40,000 and the Batman Who Laughs Rising. It's that game, the classic one.
It's bad.
Huh?
Here's my hot take on Talisman. It sucks.
It's combat monopoly.
I do not like Talisman at all. I don't understand why people like it other than blind nostalgia.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can play as Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader.
Here's my hot take on Star Wars.
It's bad.
Or Kylo Ren. All those characters you like.
Can you play as Rey?
I don't know if Rey's
they
in it.
definitely haven't put Rey in, let's be honest.
She's on the front of the box.
Oh.
She is on
That
the front
would
of
be
the
funny
box.
if she was on the front of the box but not one of the playable characters.
What about Rose
That would be
Tycho?
very indicative.
I've received no confirmation whether Rey is in it. But As far as I know, you're racing to reach old Sheev Palpatine, who's squatting in the middle of the board.
Like physically.
I am in the middle of the board.
Unlimited thigh strength.
Because of squats. That took me a minute.
I like the idea of Palpatine delivering all the lines from Ring Fit Adventure, where it's like, your sweat is so shiny and beautiful.
Crush them between your thighs.
We have a policy of not buying turnips on Sunday.
Yeah, you have to make it through all the various encounters to go and see Palpatine, where you can decide whether you want to kill him, wink,
Have a Palpatine party.
or maybe not kill him, because, you know, he has the tendency of coming back, or join him and reign as his apprentice. So not like as his, you know, oh, we're equal in this, no. You could even
surpasser, you know.
you could either choose to be his apprentice or just kill him.
Would you like to commit murder or take an unpaid internship?
Much like the TV show The
Murder.
Apprentice.
Yeah.
Every time you strike down Alan Sugar, a new Alan Sugar replaces him.
Yeah. Becomes more
Strike
richer.
me down, and I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Oh no, that was Obi-Wan. Oh well.
Anyway,
That's my impression of Alan Sugar.
Yeah.
Talisman Star Wars, there we go.
And then he
There's a
turns
visual
into
link
a...
between Obi-Wan and Alan Sugar, I think.
Yeah,
they have
sure.
a similar style.
Do they both turn into a pile of rags? Or not?
Alan Sugar's been a pile of rags for a while.
And he is
Wow!
a lord,
So many hot
so
takes on
we
this
can say
podcast.
he's on the dark side.
Should we take some emails? The first one's from Alan Sugar.
You're fired.
Matt Jarvis, why don't you like Talisman?
I used to crush beetroots with my bare feet.
Can you imagine the Alan
was his
Sugar
go-to
voice
story.
mod for Ring Fit Adventure?
Come on, keep going.
Let's take some
God.
emails.
To be honest, I'd probably exercise more if... I think if Palpatine was, definitely. I think I'd love that. He's very motivational, you know. You don't just have any old average Joe take over the galaxy and then suddenly return from death.
But the thing is, he's so slow at talking that you'd be planking for like 5 minutes while he finishes
That's
a
how he
sentence.
gets you.
Yeah.
True.
That's how he gets you. And you can stop now.
Johnny, would you like to read this email from, let's say, Lee Russ on Twitter?
Lee Russ.
This email from Twitter.
Oh, sorry,
Russ.
yes, I've skipped. It's a tweet, it's a reply. If you would like your question answered on the Dicebreaker podcast, tweet at us when we ask for questions, or email contact@dicebreaker.com with the subject line DB space podcast.
Or if you dig out a copy of Twilight Imperium 4 and whisper your question into the gravity rift, I shall hear it. Lee Russ asks, are there any trends in the board games industry you'd rather see die out, or any you'd like to see more of?
Licensed dungeon crawlers.
I think in general, dungeon crawlers.
Yeah, Will's
For the most
taken
part.
my pick.
Sorry. I'll say, constant Monopoly resets.
Yeah.
That'll be-
Oh, I was about to say Talisman spin-offs. God.
Hey.
I also think fantasy. Just have done with it.
Just generic.
Yeah,
D&D
just-
style fantasy. Yeah.
There's so... we covered this on a previous podcast, but there's just so many things where it's just so bland. It's just, you are a knight, a wizard, and a ranger. Go kill orc goblin. Just something more interesting.
What ho, Matt Jarvis? What do you mean my adventures don't interest you?
Hell no, it's Robin of Locksley.
I'm sorry, the fantasy genre.
For me, it is twig zany party games. Like,
Oh, God,
I saw the news that Edmund Macmillan creator of the Binding of Isaac, which is one of my favourite video games of all time, and I absolutely adore it, and I think it's actually a much deeper game than people give it credit for, is launching...
Not a video game journalist anymore, Johnny.
Sorry. I've had the odd game I like. He's launching a Kickstarter for a game where you play as tapeworms, and you play cutesy tapeworm cards to build a tapeworm, and I'm just like, stop. Just stop it. I hate exploding kittens. I hate imploding kittens. I hate the unicorn poop thing. You've Got Crabs is actually alright. But it's the glut of games that uninteresting people come to the pub with, and they're like, we've got to play this. It's so crazy. It's like, no, it's so bad. But what it feels to you is random. And that's what I hate. Like, I hate people who are like, I'm so random me, as a personality trait, and I hate the games that are made for those people. There, I said it.
Adding to that, games that are just like, look how offensive it is. Because speaking of tapeworm, I got an email, I think last night or this morning, it was like, we're making a not safe for work version where you're actually all penises instead of worms. And it's just like, it just feels like chasing everything like that, feels like it's just chasing the Cards Against Humanity. Oh, we became successful because we give an excuse to people to say really terrible things. Yeah. And Cards Against Humanity is still not good.
No, so as a base game, it is poor. All of the punchlines are pre-programmed. It's a game about telling someone else's jokes.
Yeah, and punching down all the time. Any other hot dunks? Hot dunks in the chamber?
Alan Sugar, right?
I'm sick of the Apprentice board game. It's in every charity shop I go to.
What? Yeah. Wait. What was that one? Was it you found it the other day, Matt Jarvis? The board... It wasn't Alan Sugar. Whose board game was it?
Oh, gosh. It was Peter Jones of Dragon's Den.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
And didn't he actually... On Dragon's Den, wasn't there a board game, I think, at some point? Accentuate, I think, which is not a particularly great game. It's very much...
Linky went through Dragon's Den, didn't it?
Yeah, and they then became Big Potato. Speaking of games that are always in John Lewis, Linky is the one.
Good lord, yeah.
Linky's actually okay. Like, for a trivia game, it's fine.
It's a good app, actually.
Yeah.
It's a good little quiz app.
Yeah. Mr. Lister's Quiz Shootout, also a pretty good Big Potato quiz game. If no one's got any more hot dunks...
Pie Face can take a jump.
Take a bite to the face.
That's not really a board game, is it? It's a kid's toy.
Yeah. When I mentioned that I do board games to my family, they were like, extended family, they were like, oh, we love Pie Face. I was like,
That's like the equivalent of, oh, my kid plays Fortnite.
Wheels' endless feud with the city of Boston continues. I thought we had a nice time when we went, Wheels, but apparently not.
I had a great time. I ate a cream pie. I lots of cocktails.
Yep.
Wills, do you want to read this one from
I'd love to.
Hobby NM? Yeah.
The Hubby. How long have you all been playing board games, and have your taste in games changed over that time? Personally, I felt that I'm enjoying more heavier games more as time goes on, and I find I enjoy light party games less and less. I do think, like, party games, like very light games, I tend to be like, but I have been, like, I found myself enjoying more sort of, like, quite breezy abstract stuff like Past Tally and things like that a lot more than I did when I first started. I tend to find, like, when I first started getting into board games, I was like, right, I need, like, the biggest, most complicated, amazing board games, and now I definitely find myself appreciating the finer things kind of thing. Like, I appreciate the sort of, like, the softer kind of listen to some music and have a nice conversation whilst we play kind of things a lot more now.
I think I'm quite similar to you in the sense that when I first started out, I was like, I want something really heavy. I want something that really makes me feel like I'm playing a board game. And like, there are still lots of board games I play that are heavy that I absolutely adore, but I've stopped looking for games based on like weight or theme or anything. When I am looking for a new board game or selecting one to play of an evening, I've effectively become the middle-aged man patting the thighs of his corduroy trousers while he just goes along the shelf. Like, I search based on vibe. And my friends and I, we've sort of fallen into a pattern where it's like, what sort of thing do we want to play tonight? It's no one will be like, I really want to play X. It'll be like, can we have something relatively chilled? Like, how competitive are we feeling? La 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 la. Like, I'm more. That's the way I now think about board games. Oh, and I play far fewer social deduction games than I used to because you can burn out on those. To be honest,
yeah, they're all really similar, aren't they?
Yeah,
I was definitely a lot more into social deduction when I started. I think it's there definitely has to be. I feel like there's been a lot of innovation in a lot of different sort of like genres of board game and social deduction. They've always just been like, it's this game, but we've added this bit on top, and it's always like, yeah, okay. I am waiting for the next sort of like, oh, that's interesting, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a copy of Oriflamme, which I bought immediately after reading Matt's excellent review on Dicebreaker.com. For those of you listening, Matt said so good in reference to the game, not his review. He's not a megalomaniac.
Hot takes on
when we got to the
review.
point where we're reviewing our reviews.
Yeah, I can't wait for that because, I mean, I like hidden roles and I like deduction in that kind of way, but I like it when it's backed up by mechanics. So it's why Coup is still one of my most played games of all time. Is why I'm really looking forward to actually playing Oriflamme, even though the box slides out and is treacherous and you'll dump everything on the floor more than you will actually open it the right way up. It's like toast; it always has to go butter side down. But yeah, that's me anyway. I've talked too much. Shut up, Johnny.
I'll say quickly on Oriflamme, A, it's really good. B, they recently put out 2-player rules for it. And you essentially just play as 2 families each. But so it can be played with 2 people now because it was previously 3 to 5. But yeah, it's really good. I think it very much sits in that vein of, and my review kind of says this, it's a little bit love letter because it's quite quick, but it's got enough strategy where it's not just random kind of drawing and quick elimination. It's a little bit coup because there's that bluffing element. And I think, like you were all saying, I think more and more, because I love social deduction, but I think more it's that element of just a little bit of bluffing goes a long way as part of something else. But when it's the whole thing, sometimes, like you say, you just kind of burn out on it because if everyone doesn't kind of vibe in the right way, or it kind of descends into just lying and kind of whatnot, like it takes a lot for a social deduction game to really feel, properly amazing. But a little bit of bluffing can just give another layer to a game, I think. And so often, that's, I think, where it's best deployed. I think, similar to you, Wills, I definitely still like big games. Like, Twilight Imperium is fantastic. Like, I love Eclipse. I will sit down and play something for 4 to 6 hours sometimes. But then, like Johnny, more and more, it's like something that just has a simple enough rule set, but enough of a kind of like, I don't need it to be super well balanced. I don't need it to be, that stuff is great. But it's just, what experience am I looking for? And like one of my favourite games of last year was Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea, which has a terrible name. But it's basically a Civ game. It's kind of simple. It's incredibly swingy because you just play cards to screw each other over with plagues or earthquakes or volcanoes, or, it's all over the place. But it's an experience that's just so much fun, and it can play, it can play in 2 to 4 hours, or you can play it in half an hour and just stop at the end of one era. And it's just really, really good.
I think for me, I started out as being a bit scared of, like, really big, complicated things, because, I was part of a group of people who were a lot more experienced in board gaming than I was. So I started out with, beginner board games, social deduction games, that kind of malarkey. So now, over the past few years, I found myself wanting to be challenged, like, a lot more, but still, I still wouldn't describe myself as really enjoying, like, complicated, like, point salad style games. So, like really thick, heavy Euro games where you have to, like, manage several different, aspects at once. Although saying that, Scythe is becoming quickly a game that I really like. So I think I'm slowly dipping my toe in the water of the kind of games that I would often have been too, embarrassed or scared to play. I'm still finding myself not a hugely fan of like intensely competitive style games. I always would lean into co-op experiences more. Also, like, just theme is still like a really important aspect to me. So like themes was something that got me into board gaming to start with. So games like Pandemic, like Shadows over Camelot, like Betrayal at House on the Hill, the kind of games where they have like fairly straightforward mechanics, but like it was the really strong theming that kind of put them above and beyond other examples. But like I'm finding themings mixed with really interesting mechanics. So like lately I've gotten obsessed with deck building games. I've always kind of liked deck building games. So like one of the first games I played was Dominion, which is like the beginner's deck building game. But like since then I've kind of like dipped in and out of it, but like recently I've just become really obsessed with the genre. I just want to play Arkham Horror real bad at the moment.
I think you've... Sorry, carry on.
No, I just keep writing news stories about it.
Yeah, fair. I was going to say, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head when it comes to theming, because I think you can get a game that could be anything but has a theme slapped on the top of it, and that is fine. But when a game's mechanics really embody elements from that theme, it's so exciting. Because
that's huge for me. Yeah,
you get those moments of recognition where you're like, oh, that's clever. No, wait, that's brilliant, because it is like the thing that we're playing.
Yeah.
Also, I know you said Shadows over Camelot, but for a second my brain heard Shadows over Camelot, and I'm just now imagining what that board game would be.
It's like a legacy version of Camelot, where some kind of horrible big business has come up and bought up all the good camels.
You can choose to add extra humps to your camel with stickers.
And if
Just
you
one
lose a
camel
race,
with 17 humps.
you have
I
to
love
slash your own
Camelot.
camel's throat if you come last.
I would eat that up.
I think we had that that same exact experience when we played Fort for the first time at PAX, where we were just like, every single mechanic you were like, oh, that's so cute and clever. Like everything was just like, yeah, this exists because of what you would expect. Like it's such a good way of teaching as well. Like when rules just make sense because they make sense in the context of the theme, it makes it so easy to grasp onto things like that.
Yeah,
I can't
Because
wait.
people are just like,
for
oh,
that
of course, yeah.
Like I've always loved Dead of Winter, for example. Like the first time I played Dead of Winter, I was like, oh, this is great, because it's like a cocktail of some really like little mechanics mixed up into like a co-op game with a theme. Zombies isn't the most original thing, but I think the artwork and the writing for the game kind of elevates it above just like the hundreds and thousands of zombie games out there. But like in the last few years, since I've been examining board games a lot more from a critical angle and like playing a lot more, like games like Dead of Winter have just like what happened?
That was a sneeze, right?
Yeah, that was my wife.
Sorry, I didn't realise. It sounded
gonna
like a
mute my
creepy
mic for a sec.
ghost. I was like, what was that? But no, like games like Dead of Winter has only become more like, oh wow, like this is because of how cleverly it like integrates, like having a traitor mechanic. Traitor mechanics, there was a time, it might be now, where like traitor mechanics are uber popular. But like having that in a game like Dead of Winter, where like that atmosphere is so like foreboding and like you feel like you're up against it, having someone in your own team who is secretly against you, you don't know who they are, and if they're doing a good job, they're not going to be caught. Like it just makes the whole experience so much more engaging, because you're like, oh wow, like there's even more stacked against us. Yeah.
Perfect. Let's take one very quick last one. Alex Meehan, would you like to read this one from Oliver Gerlach?
Oh, girl.
Oh.
Gerlach? I apologise, Oliver, if I've mispronounced your
Oliver
name.
Gerlach, writing a question on Twitter for you to read out. What's it about?
I love that. Oliver asks, DC-based systems or D20-based systems? What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of each? Personally, I'm a big fan of simple D6 pools. Johnny.
I have extremely strong opinions about this. I know I keep going first, but a D6 all the way, forever and ever and ever. I can see you grimacing over Skype wheels, but shut up and listen.
No, yeah, carry on.
D20 systems are fun and they're fine, and like I play a bunch of games that use them, but there's just something about D6 systems that it's very easy for players to understand, because if something is helping you, you're grabbing more dice. If you are bad at something, you have fewer dice. So you can feel it in your hand whether or not you should feel good about this roll. You're like, I'm only rolling 2 or 3 dice here. Like if I playing Shadowrun with my characters toward the end of the campaign, if I picked up 6d6, I was like, oof, I'm not feeling great about this. Whereas when I would make a magic, like I would cast a spell, I'd be picking up 17, and it's a very quick way of calculating successes across a broad range of skills and possible like levels of competency, and B, it's just fun. It is just fun to huck that much plastic at a table and then start picking out all of the ones that have passed a certain threshold. It makes you feel really powerful in a way that crunching the numbers in your head doesn't. It's why abacuses are cool, and writing numbers down on a pencil and paper is for dorks. Oh, shut up.
I think, yeah.
I didn't stick the landing, but the point stands.
I think like 2d6, although there's something exciting about using a die that isn't in every board game ever made and doesn't remind you of Monopoly, but there's something really nice about 2d6 where it's like if you get snake eyes or you get double 6, there's something really exciting about that, and I find it way more exciting than rolling a 1 or a 20 on a d20. Like a d20 is almost a little too granular. I think actually and I'd rather roll 2d6 than like a d12. I think actually Powered by the Apocalypse, the system, which was used in the Root RPG and Worldwide Wrestling, playthroughs of which are both available on youtube.com/Dicebreaker. The more I play of that system, the more I absolutely love it, because A, it's very simple, like you say, Johnny. It's just like, okay, it's fail, partial success, full success, but also because you're just chucking 2 dice. Like, you're not trying to squint at a tiny number on a d20. You're not going like, oh, what's a 17 versus a 16? It's just like, bam, it's likely to be a single-digit number. If you roll doubles, amazing. If you roll double ones, that sucks. You just look at it and you have that instinctive feeling of like, I rolled a double 6. Holy crap,
I think I do like systems where multiple d6s are involved, but there is just something about a d6 that feels very unimpressive. Like I think there is just like you said, it's like it's the dice that everyone have used for ages, and it doesn't feel very special to roll to me. I do agree that having a big clump of dice in your hands is always good, but I think because I've played so much Warhammer, the amount of d6 that you have to roll sometimes in that game, I've just got like PTSD from like, oh god, right, okay, someone passed me 40 dice, and I think that maybe is like slightly affecting like my opinion of it. But I think the in-betweener dice don't get enough love in systems. Like I really love d10s. I think d10s are so readable because you always have it's a 20% chance, it's a 40% chance. It's so like just completely ingrained in what you can see on the die. Is like if someone says you need to roll a 7 or lower, you're like, bang, I know exactly what the odds are straight away. Whereas if you ask for 2d6, instantly my head is just like, ugh, because my brain just doesn't do maths. And I think like tools like that make it really easy for people to jump on and be like, okay, I know exactly how likely I am to succeed at this kind of thing.
I will say,
I just love the shapes of them.
in the D&D campaign I'm playing in, this is the most laddie thing I'll ever say on this podcast, but it started as a joke, but we go tops off for 20s. If someone rolls a crit, everyone takes their top off. It's great.
What happens if you roll a 1?
Just trousers off for once.
So, we've not gone that far, but yeah, it's just bit of fun. It makes the number 20 a bit more exciting, I suppose.
Yeah.
I do think D20 is such like a ingrained die because of Dungeons and Dragons, but in actual fact, like they can be like a bit unwieldy. Like there needs to be people need to reclaim the middle dice, D10s and D8s. Seize the means of dice production.
What were you going to say, Meehan?
I was gonna say the possibility of nudity is like what excites you about the D20. I mean, like for me, the D20 is like a weird die, like a die that I was introduced to when I first played like D&D. I was like, what is this strange contraption? The shape of it is weird. I'm a fan of a D8 personally, but in terms of the D6 system versus D20, I'm more on the side of the D6 because I think D20, even though obviously you've got modifiers, but like the gap, the fail potential there, it just feels so much more like the vastness between 0 and 20 and how much it could potentially change the outcome. This seems really open to me, whereas like the D6 scenario, I feel like there's more like control there, especially if it's a system where you just add dice on, like additional dice on depending on how competent you are. Why are people smiling?
Apologies if you heard that. My cat just sneezed.
Why is it always me when
Welcome
I'm
to the
talking?
sneezecast.
Like the people are sneezing everywhere. Like
I'm sorry.
people
She's
are
not a
allergic.
people, she's a cat.
We're allergic to your opinions, Meehan.
Ooh.
Holly,
Wow.
keep it down, would you? Meehan says, shut up.
Yeah, Holly.
Yeah, Holly. I do really like systems where you roll multiple dice, but then you take the best result, like Blades. Like that feels nice. Because then it's like, well, I only need one of these to do well, and then like the more dice you have, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Surely one of these will do well, kind of thing. Rather than adding lots of things up, which I feel like can really slow things down.
Side note to this, pips all the way on D6s. I don't like D6s with numbers written on them.
Yeah.
But
Hit me up.
okay, I think that's basically all the time we've got. But let's close out by telling the folks what's coming up on Dicebreaker this week. Video, 2/3 of video team. Vidi. Does that make Lowly's the O? Anyway, Wills and Johnny, what's coming up on the video side? Don't give me that look, Wills. I'm trying to riff.
He was trying to assign us syllables. I'll be D since there's a good old D knee.
I was going to say I'll be the id.
Hey, very good. What have we coming up? We've covered Gloomhaven recently. We're covering Frosthaven and why we like it. As I say, the first part of the Deadlands Let's Play has already gone up. What have we got coming up next week?
Ironically, we've kind of talked about all the stuff that we're doing this week on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'll have a quick look at the schedule.
We're doing another painting stream this coming Thursday. If anyone wants to have a fun, chilled time and watch us paint miniatures, I might try and see if I can paint up an entire warband in 2 hours, just to see how far that gets me. Because I remembered halfway through recording this podcast that I've got the Elder Scrolls Call to Arms waiting for me to play it and review it. And so far I have assembled precisely 2 models because they were fiddly and I got annoyed and I went and had a snack instead. So I think this week I'll assemble some Stormcloaks and then I'll do the Stormcloak voice while painting them.
Fantastic. And also for folks who've missed any Dungeon Breaker, that's all up. And there's time to catch up while we're doing Deadlands.
Yes, the entirety of our series in Eberron Rising from the Last War?
Yeah, I think that's...
Eberron Rising.
Eberron Rising. That's now available on YouTube. It's got the world's greatest goblin. It's got a dinosaur named after the man who wrote Thong Song. It's... If that sounds off the wall, brace yourself, because that's barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, that's where it starts. And what an ending. My goodness. And over on the website, Alex Meehan, you've got an interview coming up. It's very exciting.
Yeah, so I mentioned it last week, but Yes, by the time you're listening to this, there'll be an interview with Mr. Matt Mercer from Critical Role. I spoke to him about the new source book, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and also his general process as a DM and as a world builder. It's a really interesting read, I hope, and it was really nice to talk to him. Also up from last week is our top video game board games list. So as we were talking about Gloomhaven, the video game earlier, we're now talking about board game versions of video games. So we're talking Street Fighter, XCOM, This War of Mine,
so
Portal, some real bangers there.
If you liked Board Game the video game, you'll love Video Game the board game.
Oh man, I would kill to play a game of XCOM with you all right now. Just whip out a tablet, turn that puppy up so you can hear all the right noises.
Yeah,
I played very little of the board game XCOM, but I absolutely love XCOM, so I would be.
I love the video games, so I have not tried the board game.
Well,
so I would
the
definitely
board
give that a
game
go.
is like very similar to the video game in the sense that the entire time you're just stressed out.
Sounds great.
Yeah, but in a good way, you know.
Yeah, and if the person who's controlling the miniatures makes bad rolls in the combat phase, you can yell at them, even though it's categorically not their fault. It's brilliant.
The
also,
combat phase of that game is very small, though. Like, most of it is, like, making decisions.
Oh, quit! We're podcasting again. Stop.
I'm sorry.
What?
What?
We're trying to sign off.
It's fine. No, I was just going to say other things on the website already up is a look at the Pathfinder Adventure Path campaigns, which was very interesting, which are kind of like pre-linked campaigns they've been running for a while. I think they actually started as D&D campaigns before they moved over to Pathfinder. But someone whose name I can't recall, Preston does, wrote that, and it was a really good read. Also up this... Well, maybe this week, maybe next, but soon after you listen to this podcast, or potentially already, will be my review of Undaunted North Africa, which will be a fuller kind of look at it. But as you can already tell, I think it's really, really good. But yeah, basically, there's a lot on the way. So keep tuned, you cool D8s and D10s.
D12, best die.
D12s.
Calling it now. Best
Eminem and the entire D12 crew. Please stay tuned.
Wow.
Are D12 still a thing?
D12, Jesus. Surely not.
I don't know.
We should get D12 on to rate the dice. I'm sure they'll be up for it.
Yeah, I too enjoy 10-minute lead-ins to a single punchline. That is not sarcasm. I genuinely do. Wow.
Oh goodness. All right. And so yeah, Dicebreaker.com is the place you want to go for the web stuff. YouTube.com/Dicebreaker is where you want to go for the video stuff, including we didn't mention for Revenge of the 6th and Revenge of the 5th and May the 4th. For goodness. Our read through of the Choose Your Destiny Star Wars game book, which
containing the greatest F-bomb ever dropped.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
I can only apologise for.
Viewer discretion advised.
Yes. But that was very good fun. So go and check that out. That's on our YouTube channel now. Also, gosh, there's so many links to drop at the end of this, but it's a plug. It's got more plugs than an outlet of the bath store. That one was better. We pulled it off. If you want Dicebreaker merchandise, such as this Big Deck Energy shirt, what I am wearing, Dicebreaker.myshopify.com is the place to go, where we have 2 new shirts, Big Deck Energy and Be Nice Roll Dice, and we will have more shirts arriving very soon, so go check it out. Okay, I think we're done plugging everything under the sun now. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Johnny Chiodini.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Alex Meehan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael F-Bomb Wheels.
Anytime, bud. Anytime.
I've been Matt Jarvis. We'll be back next Friday. Until then, have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.